Welcome. This podcast is an exploration into being human and what's possible when there's less attention on the noise in our heads. Warning: while listening to this broadcast, you may experience moments of deep peace, sighs of relief, personal insights, or long stretches of dead air. Do not be afraid. This is normal. Under the Noise with Wyn Morgan and Kate Roberts. Well, welcome everyone. This is Wyn Morgan and
I'm Kate Roberts.
Welcome to this week's episode of Under the Noise. And today we are thrilled to have with us Sarah Matthew. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I'm very pleased and honoured to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you with us. So I've known you for a few years now. I think it's 4.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. And I know in that time that quite a few things have changed for you in the way that you see your work, your life, etc. But for those people who have never even heard your name, how would you introduce yourself to someone who wouldn't know you?
That's such a great question. Well, I guess in a way it would depend on who they were. But well, I'm a mum and a wife, so I have 2 teenage boys who are much bigger than me now, and like to tease me as much as they possibly can. But really and truly, they are a delight. And I've had a long career. I've worked in corporate, and I have started companies of my own and grown and sold them. And they've all been related to marketing and communications. And almost by accident, I spent the vast majority of my career in pharmaceuticals and healthcare. And I say that because I certainly didn't have that in my mind when I set out as a commercial trainee for Johnson & Johnson. That was my first company. But anyway, it turns out that's where I ended up and loved it in the most part. And that takes me, I think, to 2017, when I met you, which was when I was out the other side of having sold my last business, and an earn-out process, which is how those kinds of businesses, those kinds of consultancies are sold over a period of time, is pretty grueling. And I'd gone into it with my eyes open, but even so, other things happen and it was still pretty grueling. And I was feeling very depleted. I think that's how I would describe it, when I was pointed towards the 3 principles. And then that changed the trajectory of not just my career really, but my life.
In what way?
Well, first of all, it made it easy. I thought about using that word, but it's true. It made it easy to get beyond the place where I felt quite trapped. And that situation immediately looked very different to me. So maybe I should give that a little bit of context, in that I'd sold this business, and strategically we had done it because we wanted to take the business to the next level. And so I was feeling very responsible for all the people who worked in my business that I'd sold to a bigger business. I felt really responsible to the bigger business that had given us the task of integrating our company with all the healthcare work that they already had, and looking after their people, and trying to maintain the values and the standards and everything that Virgo, that was my company, held dear within a much bigger organization. I was back in a publicly quoted organization with the reality that is quarterly financial reporting, and I felt like I felt trapped in that. I felt a huge responsibility to other people, and I also I really didn't have the energy at that point to think, what else do I want to do instead? I had a very senior position. I couldn't imagine going to do that sort of position for another company, because that would have been just too disloyal, and I couldn't see the wood for the trees. And then I had this huge realization that my life as I saw it was mainly in my head. I wasn't looking out onto an objective reality that my mind was very clearly and compellingly, I have to say, tricking me into believing that that's how it was. This is how it is. This is what the world looks like. These are your options. And all of that looked true. And then, thanks to very skillful 3 principles coach who's dear to us, John L. Mokadem, it was like that. It was an instant aha moment of the most gigantic proportions. And so from there, everything looked different. And I was able to leave my company behind with love and care, but knowing that they were going to be absolutely fine, and that this huge burden of responsibility wasn't real. I had innocently and unknowingly invented it myself. And that also taking a step out into the abyss, like not knowing what I was going to do next, that was fine too. That was all okay. And then when I started to work with businesses again, as I now do, sort of a mixture of consulting and coaching and mentoring, really, then everything they brought me looked very different as well. And I will always remember John saying something to me. He said, look, you'll know that you've got this as much as you ever get it. There's always more to see, right? We know that. But you'll know that you've got this when people come to you and they say, this is my problem that I need help with. And you feel the empathy for them. And at the same time, you don't see the problem, in that you can see what they're trying to do, you can see what they're trying to get, but you don't see the limitation that they see. And what's really funny is my first project was as I was finishing Supercoach, and I walked into this organization who were absolutely lovely, and they said, we're so glad you're here, so we've got this huge problem. And they said, this is what it is. And I thought, yeah, that really looks like a problem to me too. And I thought, maybe this 3 principles thing isn't quite so easy. Like I thought I understood it, but John said if I walked in to help clients and they told me what their problem was, I wouldn't see it as a problem. And yet, yeah, it looks like a problem to me. And for a little while there, I was up in my head and thinking, okay, I think I need to go back to the drawing board. I need to go and get more coaching. And eventually, of course, I just realized that I just needed to let my mind settle down. So I had this little talk with myself thinking, okay, well, even if I do see it as a problem, do I think I can help them? Yeah, I actually do. I think I can help them. And because I let go of the notion of what that might look like, what it not looking like a problem might look like, we started to work together. And just a little bit further down the line, I had this, again, big aha moment, and I saw it and I thought, oh, of course, now I see how it's not a problem. And so it's not in a kind of, well, you and Kate both know this, it's not in a kind of I know better than you do kind of way. It's not that. It's having utter compassion for where people are at, and also being able to see possibilities for them that they can't see themselves, because I know from, and I've experienced it myself, how that problem has been framed unconsciously by their minds. And that's the only place where it exists like that. In the rest of the world, to the rest of the people, that's not how that looks right now. There's no reason why low negative thinking needs to extrapolate into disaster scenarios moving forward. And so it changed my life, because I remembered that there have been many times when I've hurtled out into the unknown, having no idea what was going to happen, and then amazing things did. And I just let go of the need to know, and the illusion of control. And I realized that, I all this responsibility that I had put on myself was as a result of thinking that I could control stuff. And I realized that, well, there are some things that were in my control, but they are far less than I was thinking.
Cool. There's so much in what you've said. There's something earlier on that I would love to explore. Because for anyone listening, they might have heard you say something like, well, wait a minute. It's possible for me to look at what another person sees as a problem and not see it as a problem. How do you account for that?
How do I account for it? Well, it's not that person is choosing to see it as a problem. That is what it looks like to them in their own minds. And it's because our minds are so used to trying to keep us safe, and and the us that they're trying to keep safe is ourselves. And in doing that, there's all this calculating of worst case scenarios the entire time. And I realize, one of the things I do with people is I just say, okay, look, let's stop for a moment and let's see where we are right here, right now. Like, with your 5 senses, what are you experiencing this very second? And that has most often a pretty calming effect on people. And then we might ask, okay, well, the thing that you're worried about, the challenge, the problem, the scenario that you need help with, where is there physical evidence of that being the case right now? And there isn't. In 99.9% of the time, there isn't. So what we're doing is we're projecting into the future what we think is going to happen, and that's the problem. And so, to give you an example, with one of my clients early on, they had said, what's happened is we've had 3 senior people all leave us at the same time. And those senior people, for very different reasons, it's just really, really unlucky timing. One's gone off to get married and go around the world, which they'd always wanted to do. One's gone to go and do something else, etc. The trouble is, those 3 people, they run our biggest team with the most amount of business in the business. And so what does it mean for client service and continuity? And what does it mean for our own team and their sense of stability? And it's all a disaster. And, well, why is it a disaster? Well, because we're imagining all of the negatives of that scenario. But the reality is, those people, they're leaving or they have left. That's going to happen. And so we can keep operating from a place of fear, or we can say, that's what's happened. And we may as well think positive thoughts about the future as negative ones. It's just that our minds are more attuned to the negative ones. And in fact, in the end, with this company, we did an exercise where, because it was really slowing things down, it was getting them caught up. And so we did an exercise where we pretended that they all joined the company on that day, and they didn't know anything about what had happened before. And so we just did a little inventory of, okay, what's going on here? And said, well, we've got these clients, we've got all these clients. That's pretty impressive. And we're doing all this work. Some of it's so exciting. Well, that's really cool. And we've got all these people in the team, and look how skilled they are, and look how experienced they are. Well, that's amazing. And we've got all these opportunities coming up. Well, yeah, that's amazing. And so although, it was a bit of a, I don't know, a technique in a way, but it was what was needed to let go of how they were framing that reality, because the reality was being described, and it was the description that was the problem, not the reality itself. And I think, I don't know whether that explains it, Wyn, in terms of how I see it, but that's what comes to mind.
I've seen so many times when, whether it's on a one-to-one in coaching an executive, or it's with a company or a department, a team within a company, how problems, in inverted commas, make the mind less able to actually have fresh ideas, to stay in the realm of possibility, as opposed to the doom-mongering that can occur when we're just seeing it through the eyes of, it's a problem. And it's funny how just what you've described, by seeing it for what it is, changes the entire dynamic of what we do to actually account for the current situation. Amazing. Beautiful example, Sarah.
Yeah, it's funny, because when I found the 3 principles, I think with my own business even, I just had this sensation of, oh my goodness, if I had known this when I was running my last business, everything would have been different. And what's hilarious is that I had that very conversation quite soon after having this realization of what was really going on for me. But the problem was, when someone said to me, okay, well, then how would it have been different in your business? I would open my mouth to answer and nothing would come out, because I hadn't fully integrated the understanding. When we let go of our personal thinking, it's a feeling. It's the most wonderful feeling of peace and calm. And I don't know about anyone else, but I felt utterly liberated. And I had a kind of visual metaphor for it, which is that it felt like I was walking out of this very heavy, black, dark cloak, and it was all the way to the ground. And I just walked out of it, and it crumpled on the floor behind me, and it was gone. So all that stuff, all of that heaviness I'd been carrying around, just disappeared in an instant, absolutely gone. And how I felt was, just light and released, and all of these feelings. And so I had this knowing, this deeper intuitive knowing, this is going to change everything. It would have changed everything had I known. And people would say, but how? And I say, I don't know. I just know it would, and it does. And in all honesty, since then, it's taken me well, yeah, even now it's still coming. But now I do know. And another example from my own business was when we'd sold the company to the parent company. There was a whole chunk of what we did for which there was no knowledge or experience in the parent company that had bought us. And I'll never forget the leader of that part of the business coming to talk to me and saying, I'm really worried about the future. And I said, well, why are you worried? And he said, because, the company that's bought us, they don't get what we do. They don't understand our bit of the business. And that makes me feel massively worried that we won't have the growth potential that we thought we were going to have. They really don't get it. They won't make the right decisions for us. And none of that looked true to me. But what I attempted to do was to rationally put another side to that argument. And because to me it looked like, well, you're saying what you're worried about, and I'm going to tell you why you don't need to be worried about it. Right? Because that's all I can do. But it's like playing with play swords in the air out in front of you. Like, why would my version of the future be any more accurate and reassuring than his version of the future? But that's what we would have tried to do. And that actually, coming from a marketing and comms background, that is what we try to do. We try and communicate on a rational basis. How it would be different now is I would know that, he is feeling insecure. He is feeling his thinking. I'm not going to rationally try and persuade him that his version of the future is wrong. That's not going to do it. That's not going to change how he feels. Not unless I've got something really concrete to say to him, like, well, guess what? Here's a plan where it's already baked in all of the investment that you're going to need for the next 3 years, etc., etc. And even then, Wyn, I have a sense that still wouldn't have completely done it, because that wasn't where he was coming from. And now I would know how to be with him and what to ask him. And who knows, he might still, ultimately he was so sure that this terrible future of sequential devastating events was going to happen. He left the company. Nothing I could do to persuade him was going to stop him, which I always think is very interesting, because you're worried about an uncertain future where you are, and you join a new company that's completely uncertain. But anyway, I don't know that would have prevented him from leaving, and maybe that was the right path for him. But I do know that at that time of him feeling really insecure about it, I could at least have helped him feel a bit better about that.
Lovely. As you were sharing that, there's something else that occurred to me as well. The number of times I hear people say things like, well, there's this big problem because they just don't get it, and that's going to inhibit their growth potential because they just don't understand it. And in the weight of all of that thinking, they don't even realize that they've just said the solution.
Yes, I know.
Because it's just, well, they don't get it. So how would you get them to get it? I'd not thought of that. It's like, I know, because that's what problem thinking does, because we're in the pit of seeing things thickly without seeing the common sense ideas that are bleeding obvious right in front of our face, where we're not in the worried state of mind, the problem seeing state of mind. It's just a fascinating thing that often something so simple can be visible just by not being so ingrained in the way of seeing things through the eyes of a problem.
Yes. And as you were saying that, I think the other dimension of it is that when we're stuck in that thinking, it's almost that we become more separate and more isolated.
Yeah.
Because there's an underlying frustration. You know, you will hear people say, well, they should get it, won't you? You hear that? They should get it. It's their job. They're more senior people. They should get it.
It's not my job to get them to get it. And
yeah. And it really does look like that.
It does. It does. Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
It's a pleasure.
It's interesting too, Sarah, because it seems like the thing to do is to make a decision when we're like that, when we're in that problem space, that it makes a lot of sense to somehow act on that feeling, you know. And so even if, you know, his decision to go to another job ends up being a good decision, it's still coming from that space of everything that's wrong.
Yes.
And your decision to leave came from a very different place where you knew everything was going to be okay when it settled down, and it made sense to go.
Yeah, it absolutely did, Kate, because I remember thinking that the mist had cleared, and the idea of staying there seemed utterly nonsensical. Like, that was the bit that looked mad, not the, yeah, it's time to move on. I don't know to what. Yeah, but it was crystal clear. Yeah. And as Wyn will tell you, I spent all of Supercoach saying, well, I'm not a coach and I don't think I want to be a coach, but I'm here because I want to learn this. This being what I had experienced. Because the irony was that for the longest time, a lot of our business was about behavioral change. And we employed on projects and various initiatives, you know, some of the leading psychologists and behavioral economists in the world. And yet, we didn't understand this. We didn't understand that. Well, I think the easiest way I have found to describe it to people is that what we think determines how we feel, and we're not consciously choosing that thinking. And when we get that, and then that's how you get behavioral change, right? So I finally had this missing piece of the jigsaw, which is, oh, that's why some of those campaigns, they work for some of the people some of the time, but they never work for all of the people all of the time. We'd try as we might, goodness, we gave it our best, you know, and we brought in the experts and we tried really hard, and we did some great work, and we achieved some change, but we were missing this vital piece of the jigsaw. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it when I saw it. And then I was utterly compelled. But in my personal mind, I had an idea that, well, I'm not a coach, and I really don't think that's what I'm going to be doing. But yeah, here we are in 4 years down the line. Apparently I'm a coach.
And apparently making massive impact in the people that you work with.
Oh, thank you, Wyn.
I know that's true from our conversations over the last 3 years. Thank you. How would someone get hold of you?
They can get hold of me via my website, which is www.thevibrantcompany.com. They can email me, Sarah@thevibrantcompany.com. They can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. I should say that the reason it's the Vibrant Company is because having had this experience in 2017, I came back from seeing John, and then I decided to enroll on Supercoach, but I hadn't started it yet. But I started to be exposed to some of the material, and I was absorbing it, like osmosis at a rate that was unbelievable. And literally my friends and family kept saying to me, "You're so vibrant. What have you done? Where have you been? What has happened?" And when I was deciding to go as an independent and go and do some of this work, what do I call this? And I thought, do you know what? I want that for everybody. I want vibrant for everyone. And that is my mission.
Wonderful. Lovely story. And the details, you don't have to pause the podcast or rewind. The details are there in the description of the website and the email. Or if you're on YouTube, they're on the description below.
Sarah, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear about your book.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm actually writing 2 books, which I must be a complete nutter. In fact, I know I am, but one I'm co-writing, and the other I've been working on my own. The one that I hope is most close to being finished is the one that I've co-written. And last year, when the pandemic happened, well, in fact, just before then, there's a private members club for entrepreneurs in London, and unsurprisingly, Kate, about 70% of the members are men and 30% are women. And there's a really lovely senior management team there, and via a friend that got in touch and said, "Can you help us to bring more women into the club?" And so an obvious thing to do was an activity around International Women's Day, which was last March. And I said I would, but I was not prepared to do it just talking to women, because I think that's ridiculous. We need to have everybody, and it needs to be inclusive. And so Barry, who Wyn knows, and myself, we hatched this plan, and we called it The Rise of the Feminine. So not necessarily men versus women, in fact, not that at all, but the idea of feminine energy coming into balance with the male energy. And the byline of it was the next era of enterprise. And I really loved I looked up the word enterprise. It came to mind. I didn't think of it. It was given to me in my mind. And I looked up the original meaning, and it said, what it really means is a bold undertaking. I loved that. And I thought, right, that's what we need. We need bold undertakings if we're going to change the world of business. And that's what we were talking about. So that the people in them can be more vibrant, themselves and in their lives. So we did this event, and we had to do it virtually, which had not been the plan. And we had far more people come along than we envisaged. And the thing that happened at the end was completely unforeseen. We got to the end and people said, "Great, when are we doing it again?" We said, well, I hadn't even thought of that. Anyway, a long story short, this initial event turned into a series that went all the way through to September last year. And it was a weekly virtual get-together online hosted by Homegrown, and it was called The Next Era of Enterprise. And each week we invited an entrepreneur or a business leader, spokesperson, to come and talk about what they were up to, and Barry and I interviewed them. And Barry, more from a Barry is Barry, very creative perspective, which was brilliant. And I guess me more from just a curiosity point of view, not really questioning them from a 3Ps point of view, but there's a little bit of that. And when we're about halfway through, I said to Barry, we should write this up. This is an amazing time, a point in time. We've got these fantastic people. We should write about this. And then Roger, who is another 3Ps coach here, he had been coming to every single event, every week he showed up and had been brilliant. And I said to him, think about writing a book. And he said, I'll help you. So it's Roger, Barry and I. And the I guess the sting in the tail of all this is that we finished it. Well, so we thought, when we got to November, we were reading it and we thought, yeah, it's okay. And then we had this massive download where we just thought, oh, it's just structured in the wrong way. There's a better way of doing this. So it's almost a rewrite, but it's one of those things where when you know, and having seen it, you couldn't unsee it. It's like, no, we've got to do it. We've got to write it again. Darn it, we've got to do it again. So it's with me at the moment. Barry and Roger have done their bits, and I'm doing my edits. And we've changed the title of it. So we've changed it because what I found was that every week I asked the question, if not this, then what? And that's what wanted to come out. So the reason we restructured it is because we could see that there was a list of themes of if not this is, and then what's. So we restructured the book around the if not this is and the then what's. And so it's down to me now. I've got to finish my bit. And the other book I've been writing is around helping people to stop worrying. And I really saw in the pandemic that lots of people, for completely understandable reasons, had very busy, very overwhelmed minds, lots of worry. Will I catch the virus? Will my family catch the virus? Oh my goodness, I have caught the virus. What's going to happen? What's going to happen to my job? All of those completely legitimate reasons. But the worrying part is optional. And I thought, I wonder if I can write that down. But given my background, which is medical science, I gave myself this task of going, okay, well, I know it works, but why does it work? From a scientific point of view, why does it work? And every time I thought I'd got to the definitive science on this bit, I realised that someone else over here had done a new bit of science, and they'd gone, well, no, it doesn't really work like that. It works like this. And so it went off at a little bit of a journey, because I could have written it as a very short book, but I wanted it to be, no, if you really want to know why it works, here's why it works. And like at the moment, I'm stuck again because I found this latest study, and now I'm in dialogue with that neuroscientist because I read her book and her paper, and then I thought, yeah, okay, but what about this bit? So then I wrote to her, and she was like, ooh, that's really interesting. I don't know. So who knows, Kate, if that one will ever come out. But the first one, if I don't finish it, either Barry or Roger will come around and strangle me. So it's it's good to have accountability partners.
It's also good to have lockdown in some instances as well, because they can't come to strangle you in the current climate.
I wouldn't stop Barry, as you know. So yes, that's what I'm up to. So the first one's not so much 3Ps, although Roger's writing, I will gladly share a copy when we finished it, because we're going to make it available. We're going to self-publish it because we want it to be available for free to people. Like the energy of it doesn't feel like it's something we should charge for. So when we get it on the website, we'll invite people. They can make a donation if they want to, but they really don't have to. And the next piece is that the way we're going to structure it is as a living book. So you'll be able to get the book as it is, with Roger's particularly, his beautiful writing. It's just lovely from a really beautiful 3Ps point of view. Mine's a bit more, it is 3Ps, but also kind of practical. And then Barry's is Barry's, right? Which is fantastic to read. It's stunning, and it reflects his personality. And then there are contributions from all of the speakers who were with us throughout the series. But it's going to be a living book, so you'll be able to download it as it is, and then each chapter will live on its website, and you'll be able to add to it or challenge it or ask questions about it, so that over time, each if not this gets a bit broader and collects more then what's, so that people can explore those and investigate them in their own time and maybe see some possibilities that they hadn't thought of.
Mm-hmm. So it's like an exploration that keeps going.
Yeah. And people might have other, if not this is, that they want to add as well. I'm sure they will, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
thank you, both of you. It's just lovely to be in your energy. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah. Whereabouts are you, Kate? Where in the world are you?
I'm actually in the US, in Florida.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
It's always a delight to talk to Wyn, and of course it's lovely to meet you finally as well.
So you've been listening to Under the Noise. I'm Kate Roberts.
And I'm Wyn Morgan.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have a topic or question that you'd like us to chat about, email Wyn or Kate at wyn@winning.co.uk and Kate at katerobertscoaching.com. Until then, enjoy what's possible under the noise.